Let's talk about something they rarely teach when they mention Japanese internment camps during World War II. Because they'll tell you about the camps. They'll tell you about the so-called relocation. But they almost never tell you about the resistance. And there was real resistance. Organized, principled, courageous. And it deserves to be remembered. After Pearl Harbor in 1941, over 120,000 Japanese Americans, 2/3 of them were U.S. citizens. They were forcibly removed from their homes on the West Coast and locked up in camps. They lost farms, businesses, property. Families were forced to sell everything they owned for pennies or just abandon it. They were shipped to remote barbed wire camps under armed guard, all because of racist hysteria dressed up as national security. And the government wanted them quiet, obedient, grateful even for being protected. But not everyone went quietly. There were people who refused to just accept their fate. One of the most famous was Fred Korematsu. He was a young man in California who denied the removal orders. He changed his name, tried to pass as Mexican-American, and stayed in the Bay Area with his girlfriend. He was caught, arrested, and convicted. But he fought it all the way to the Supreme Court. He lost there in 1944. The infamous Korematsu v. United States, that decision upheld the exclusion orders. But decades later, he'd be vindicated when his conviction was finally overturned in the 1980s. He spent the rest of his life speaking out so it wouldn't happen again. Then there was Gordon Hirabayashi. He openly refused the military curfew and the exclusion orders in Seattle. He turned himself in deliberately, said it violated his rights as an American citizen. And he took his case to the Supreme Court too, but unfortunately he lost as well. But he never stopped fighting. His conviction was also overturned 40 years later. He proved that the government had suppressed evidence, that there was actually no military necessity for those camps. Minoru Usui in Oregon did the same thing. He walked the streets after curfew to force his own arrest. He demanded his rights in court, saying the government couldn't treat citizens like enemies on the basis of ancestry. He also lost back then. But like Korematsu and Hirabayashi, he too was eventually vindicated. And it wasn't just individuals. Inside the camps themselves, people resisted in other ways too. There were labor strikes over pay and food conditions. There was civil disobedience, when authorities tried to force them to sign loyalty oaths, demanding they renounce any allegiance to the Japanese emperor, something they never had in the first place. That loyalty questionnaire caused massive anger and confusion. Many refused to sign, rightfully so. Some answered no in protest, and were branded as disloyal and sent to a harsher camp. Then there were groups like the Heart Mountain Fair Play Committee, draft-age men who refused induction from behind barbed wire. They argued, how can you draft us when you're imprisoning us? Why should we fight for a country that stripped us of citizenship rights? They were arrested and charged with draft evasion, convicted, branded traitors in the press. But they were making a stand. Freedom isn't conditional. You can't ask us to die for democracy abroad when you're denying it to us at home. So yeah, Japanese internment was mass incarceration. It was oppressive, abusive incarceration. State-sanctioned racism. But it wasn't met with silence. It was met with courage, lawsuits, civil disobedience, even at enormous personal cost. Because those who resisted understood that being American wasn't about blind loyalty. It was about demanding the rights that were promised to you, even when your country tried to deny them. And that's part of American history too. It's just the part they want you to forget.